Afternoon and welcome. Welcome to the Town of Highland Beach Town Commission meeting. Today is Tuesday, June 18th, and it is 1:30, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could have the roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Present.
Commissioner Peters,
Present.
Commissioner David,
Present.
Vice Mayor Stern,
Present.
Mayor Moore,
Present.
Town Manager Labadie,
Present.
and Town Attorney Rubin.
Present.
Thank you.
We could all rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any changes to the agenda? No,
No changes here.
if no changes.
I have one change.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We're going to add a resolution to the agenda. It's a resolution 2024-016 regarding the community aesthetics feature agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation. And I will make copies for you prior to that, but we're adding that to the agenda.
And that's so we could build the town entry signs.
Oh.
So that FDOT finally responded and now we got to sign this, basically saying we'll be responsible for it, but
For what? I didn't hear the beginning of the motion.
it's for the town entry signs, the new signs that we
Thank you.
approved.
Okay.
Geez,
A long time ago.
15 months
Yeah,
ago. Yeah. So
okay.
we're
Yes,
finally getting all the approvals. in
Okay.
place.
and we're
So-
asked to add it as 10B.
Okay.
I move we approve the agenda as amended.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to presentations, proclamations. We have a resolution number 2024-015, a resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, ratifying the selection, appointments, and term of office of members of the Natural Resources Preservation Advisory Board and providing for an effective date. And I believe we have the candidate here, Ms. Jones. Okay, if you wouldn't mind coming to the podium, stating your name, where you live, and just a few things about yourself.
Hi, my name is Karen Jones. I
Yeah,
live in
talk
Highland
into the
Beach.
microphone.
Hold the microphone towards me. I should know this. My name is Karen Jones, in case you didn't hear me. I've lived in Highland Beach for 27 years. I live at 4307 South Ocean, which is directly across from Bellito Isle. I am into a lot of charity work. I worked for a company called Boston Proper for 15 years. I left there when my husband got sick with cancer, approximately 7 years ago. My husband passed away 4 years ago. So we did a lot of charitable events for Delray Achievement Center in Delray, and also put on a lot of those events. I'm very interested in the beach because I live on the beach. I've seen a lot of things happen in 27 years, some good, some bad. So would be thrilled to be a part of this and I live here year round. I do go on vacation once in a while, but I do live here year round. And I'd be happy, I'm the eye on the beach. We just redid our dune. I think Barbara presented it to everyone and then they had their dune done. It's probably the 6th time I've had to do my dune since I've lived here. So we had to rebuild and very into nature and not putting a major concrete seawall up like a lot of my neighbors have and keeping it beautiful, the beach. So I'm really interested in the beach and keeping it beautiful and the community as well. So that's a little bit about me. If you have any questions, I will gladly answer them.
Yes, we'll go through each commissioner.
Okay.
Yes. Commissioner Goldberg.
Thank you. Thank you for putting your name out there and coming forward to fill this appointment. Well, you've certainly been cognizant of all the town's needs in your personal home. What motivated you now to come forward?
Well, I wanted to do it years ago, but I just really couldn't. I didn't have the time. I had a full-time job and then my husband got ill. So Barbara really motivated me because she was very motivated about what I did. I was very hands-on on redoing the dune and our stairs and everything else. And we live right next door to the Bellito entrance. So I'm very aware of what's going on there and keeping the plants and everything natural. So it really motivated me because it's my home and it's my forever home and I want it to be beautiful. And a lot of things are going on, like with the park up there. It's a little scary. So I really want to be hands-on and help to do whatever I can to preserve the beach and our property.
Have you attended any of the meetings?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, over what period of time?
Oh, I have only been to 2
Okay.
that I was invited to.
And you don't have any problem with the time commitments?
No,
Okay.
no. Unless I'm, on a vacation at some point, but that's it. I mean, I'm not working, so.
Okay. Well,
Yes.
I thank you again for coming forward.
You're
and
welcome.
Donating your time like this.
Yeah.
I
I have
welcome
a lot
you
of time on
on
my
the
hands that
committee.
needs to be.
All right. All right,
Yeah.
well, we need you.
Okay.
We need all of
Yeah.
our community to be
Well,
very involved. That's
well,
wonderful.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Thank you for applying for this. Looks like you're going to be an expert at this there. You did your dunes over 6 times?
Yeah, in
Did you bring,
27 years.
did you bring sand in or?
When we had Sandy, when nobody realized, ironic,
Right.
Sandy, nobody realized how much it affected our beach. I
Mhm.
mean, the Northeast got,
Right.
damaged terrifically, but we lost our entire dune. And, I was working at that time and my husband was in India at a Formula One race. So that's a whole nother story, but I was videotaping the dune saying, the dune is gone, the walkway is gone. I don't know what to do. So like, no, it didn't hit you guys. Well, it did because the water
did.
churned and affected us tremendously. I could see the pilings on my deck because I live right
Mhm.
on the top of the dune level. So I got together, we came down to town hall and Al Giacchetti, who's a big builder here, Jag Design, his son took over, has been my friend from New York when I was a teenager. We got together and he got someone to bring in sand and we petitioned to get immediate, relief and not wait. So we did get sand in for about a quarter of a mile there on the beach. So, we did that. So that was a big. And then we found Dan Belanti. I don't know if you guys know him. He did a whole presentation here a while ago. And he's been with me ever since, helping me renourish the dune and putting the proper plants in and doing all that good stuff.
Thank you, Karen. I think you'd be a good asset to
Thank-
the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not surprised you've had to replace the dune multiple times. All it takes is one good hurricane.
Yes,
Even if it doesn't quite hit here.
yes, it's true. And I'm praying ours looks really good now that we don't have
Right.
any bad
Mhm.
storms.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually Sandy, which didn't hit Fort Lauderdale either, wiped out part of the road on A1A.
Yeah.
So it did. It had a significant amount of damage here that people don't realize because it didn't hit here exactly.
Yes,
Thank you for volunteering. We love new faces.
oh, thank you.
And to have new people get involved in what's going on in our town. And I am sure you will be an asset.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, well qualified. Thank you very much for applying and thanks very much.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, I wanted to extend a warm welcome. Thank you for getting involved. I really appreciate it. And the dunes are a really important initiative for this board and for the town, nourishing the dunes there. And I think you guys did a great job. It's really beautiful and it's really amazing how it's really filled in very
Yeah, it really
nicely.
is. Thanks.
Yeah, it looks
Thank
great.
you.
Hopefully it'll withstand.
Now I got to get my neighbor to do something.
Yeah, yeah. And then that's an initiative of the
I got
town.
one neighbor, the neighbor next door to them and the neighbor next door to them, but the one right next door to Bellito, he's not, he's not a full-time. So
Yeah, it's in pretty bad shape.
it's
yeah.
bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So,
Mhm.
yeah, we would really love your help in spreading the word with all the other residents. So yeah, I'm definitely in favor. So if we could have a motion, please.
I move we approve resolution number 2024-015, appointing Karen Jones to the Natural Resources Preservation Advisory Board.
Seconded.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yes.
Karen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just hang out.
Okay.
Stay as long as you like. Stay as long as you like. Moving on to the proposed operating budget presentation for fiscal year 2024-2025.
And yes, my favorite time of year has come once more as we kick off our 24-25 budget season. And nothing gives me greater pleasure than to state yet again, our financial position remains strong again, and putting in positioning us to move forward to complete as David will go through all the details, be able to tackle a lot of capital projects and, really mark another great year moving forward, and allowing us as, once we get through that, David, hit one more slide real quick for me. Sure. Kind of the theme that we put out is safeguarding the future of our 3 miles of paradise. And that's really what we're doing because one, the budget that we present, this is preliminary, so we've got time to work through that and we'll go through the process, the statutory process. But we're remaining consistent with our 5-year forecast model, and it's proving itself moving forward in that we're going to be able to put some funds back into reserves and address all capital. And what you will see is our decision to implement our own fire rescue department. You're going to start seeing that difference, that savings has freed up our ability to, pay off our debt for Synovus, replenish the reserves a bit, and then put in police and fire. So again, some of the things that we saw or experienced was an 8.8% increase in property values. We did better than many communities. Can you go back one, David? Many other communities in the state. David will walk through debt service. We finally accomplished our goal as now all entirely taken care of with the water and sewer rates. So that debt is no longer on the general fund. We've added we'll explain a little bit in greater detail, the fire department debt service. So basically, that debt we still have to capture and pay off. So what water is now gone, there is a little bit, and we show it as a millage increment, 1.1875 covers that Synovus debt. So that's in there. And again, another $370,000 fell off of our total debt package for the water plant. One of our notes closed. Next. Again, we made some assumptions based on a little conservative projections. Healthcare and insurance costs, we're trying to hold around 7% is what we think it'll be. You'll see the police, PBA union contracts, and then the non-police union employees. So everything is projected through that. Are covered. All of the steps and things of that nature are covered. General insurance increase, that's like our property insurance, workers' comp, things of that nature, 7 to 10%. Maintained interfund transfers, so the water and sewer and the building fund have to pay their fair share of general administrative fees, but we did not increase it. We kept it consistent. And the water and sewer rates, 8%, and that's the last year of that original 5 years. If you can believe that. We've gone through all 5 years of that rate structure plan. So this would be the 5th year. And we're seeing the debt fall off. So our plan, staying focused on your plan and executing is actually working. And that we're also going to see how the 5-year forecast model is also working. So everything we put our minds to and remain committed to, we are succeeding at. Some of our accomplishments, of course, we're going to know fire rescue department completing their fire station. Now our fire station originally was supposed to be about 8.5 million. It finished out about 7.7. So maybe they'll bring us a big paper check for the $478,000 return in savings. That would be great. That was through some of our value engineering and improvements in the supply chain. We had 3 charter amendments approved ballot questions. So we approved the sewer lining project. We got the charter funding limitation. I put $1 million. We'll get close to that. It's $900,000 adjusted for the rate of inflation. I just put $1 million in, a little bit easier to remember. We have the ability to designate canvassing to the county. We secured another appropriation for lift station 2. So we got another 275 that did not get vetoed by the governor. Our sewer lining project did, but we're working through alternate avenues through the state revolving fund program or through the DEP. There are other programs available to help with that. So we're jumping right into that as we speak. We approved turtle lighting ordinance, beach erosion dune management. That study was completed. So the Natural Resource Advisory Board will be rolling that out to the public through a series of events and letters to kind of get people to engage in that activity. Next.
So that, the, lift station 2, that second,
Yeah.
that's a done deal?
I got all the paperwork. It's with Madison, my new assistant. She's working on filling out that paperwork now with Sergio in Public Works. So we got those dollars.
So this is the second.
Second year in a row, we got 2 appropriations.
This is, I don't know, we should.
Wonderful.
Should
It's
we
the right
like?
state legislator,
Take a
the
big-
governor. I mean, they just love our lift station projects.
That's a big deal.
Which is our biggest vulnerability for climate change, for the sea level rise, is to get those vaults and pits and motors and electric systems out of the water or out of that low elevation. So we did get secured that appropriation. So that was really good news.
And it's in the amount of 275,000.
200
So last year was our first ever Highland Beach
Yep.
receiving an appropriation,
Mhm.
and that was for 250,000.
That was 275,000 as
275.
well. Yep.
And now this is our second. So, I mean, that's really incredible. That's
From
fantastic.
not getting anything in the
Ever.
first 73 years
Right.
of our existence, but on the 75th anniversary to be able to deliver our second appropriation. A lot of great success, a lot of teamwork, a lot of support from the commission. Peggy Gossett-Seidman on the legislator doing some heavy pushing for us. Jared, our lobbyist, doing a good job and generally reaching out to as many folks as we can during Palm Beach days. And it worked out for us. So we got a
Well, I just
second
want-
appropriation.
I just want to recognize that. That's huge. This is the first I've been hearing of it. I mean, I guess we heard it was going to go before the governor, and I've heard that before, and then it gets vetoed. So it didn't get vetoed. So that
Well, our
is,
sewer lining for 850 did, but we kind of anticipated that was kind of a big ask when, these other communities were asking as much or larger sums. And we knew that the governor was kind of targeting that $750 million to $1 billion with veto pen. So we just didn't know how that was going to drop out. But the sewer lining came up, but it's okay. Because the residents gave us the flexibility to execute that project. We're going to look at Commissioner Gossett or Representative Gossett-Seidman did identify DEP has other grant programs for similar projects. So we'll uncover all those stones, turn them over, see what comes up. If not, we have the state revolving fund, which is a federally subsidized loan program. So you can get loans to do the project for 1% to 2%, which are always great interest rates. And then we can tackle it as a whole project if we decide, or maybe we do it a different way and do it in smaller lifts during the off season and do it in smaller projects. But at least we have the options. The residents gave us authorization, which way you guys saw fit to execute that project. So we'll be able to tackle it. The only trick with getting the appropriation is Dave had to do some finance changes for the ARPA dollars that we had allocated to this. So we've through accounting had to move some of those dollars around for other capital projects, but we had capital needs. So it just drops down and picks us up on the list. So it's a really good move for us.
Marshall, how is the road revamping going to affect lining the sewers?
I don't think
Or
FDOT
vice
will let us
versa.
do it at the same time. I don't think they're going to let us mobilize. So I think that's kind of maybe a good thing, I guess, that we didn't get it. If there is a way, is that we have a little bit of time. So you figure you're not going to be able to do anything until 26. If you go through the state revolving, this is a perfect state revolving fund project. It usually takes them 12 to 18 months to get you through their grant approval process. And what that is they'll waive soft costs and then you get the hard costs. They sell bonds. You could do some or all, however we wanted to do that. If that is the option we choose, or we just wait and then just do a third of the town at a time. Again, it's not as invasive as a total removal and replacement. So we're just going from manhole to manhole. So we can look at those options too. in future meetings, we could kind of see how we want to do that. If we want I think there might be some fatigue in the community after the FDOT project. To occupy the right of way after it's been totally restored again. To maybe we look at doing smaller lifts. It'll cost a little bit more for the total project, but some of the material costs are coming down. So it's getting a little bit better out there for the resins.
And the benefit of the revolving fund is it's super low interest rates, right?
Super low interest rates. Yeah. So that's the good thing. So it's so low that the earnings right now, and we'll have this conversation a little bit later, is that what we're earning on our savings will far exceed what the cost is to borrow the money. So that's a good position to be in. Similar to our fire, it's 3.26% over 10 years, and we're earning 5.5% conservatively on our investment portfolio. So it was better to borrow than to spend cash because we're making more on the cash side of things. But our budget's good. You can see all the capital projects we were able to complete this year. So, some of these are still forthcoming. The entry signs are coming, I promise. That's why you got that resolution in there. But you see all the other major infrastructure projects that we're doing for those folks in Bellito. I know that they've reached out to me. We're in the engineering phase for the bridge, and then we're going to fix it next year. So we'll do it now, and then maybe we do the work in the fall, but it's going to be broken between the 2 fiscal years. So we have our structural engineers out there evaluating it. Next. Some of our priorities coming up is the 75th anniversary festivities, what we're going to do. And I think it warrants something a little bit bigger than our normal activities. So we'll begin to have those conversations for the next fiscal years. That will be in the fall. Marine accessory structures. I know Ingrid has been working on that for a while. So she's tackling the final pieces of that. Rehabilitation of the old fire station. That's a pretty sizable capital project. We've budgeted for it in the general fund. PGAL is still doing the final look at the structural elements to that. So we hope to have something soon to look at. Resurfacing of Town Hall. After all the work we've done, we've kind of beaten up our pavement. So we're just going to go and do a mill and overlay on the town complex just to get our road surfaces up here. We'll do the Bellito Bridge repairs, Milani Park compliance. We'll see where that takes us. We're also working through the design and grants for the marine docking facility here behind the library. Water treatment. We've been in those tours. We have 3 trains. It's a series of seals and ports that have to be redone. So we're going to do all of those next year. David, next. Again, we'll see the 3R project and the speed at which they're executing. They're going to hit us hard during season. So it's going to be a rough season next year for construction on A1A. Sanitary sewer lining. We put this in there. This may be one that moves based on the guidance. But we may start some of the financing and applications for grant type process. Degasification system, beach vehicles, AC repairs, new entry doors for Town Hall. They're kind of getting old and separated by an inch gap. So time to get some new doors. So those are some of the bigger things that we're going to be tackling. It's in the budget. We'll get into more detail as we move forward. But again, our financial position is quite strong. And you'll see that in the bottom line numbers that we'll be able to, put $500,000 back into reserves. If not a little bit more, it's hard to tell in a budgeting phase. But at first blush, I haven't even taken my red pen much to the budget yet. So, as we do that with your guidance, we'll determine what that final number looks like. But that was part of our 5-year program, is on good years is to start putting back that $4 million we borrowed from the reserves. So when our property values don't increase as much, we'll have the ability to use the reserves versus raising taxes, which we never want to do. So, and now that we have 2 public safety entities, I always do this, that their costs regardless always go up. Doesn't matter what your revenues, their costs continue to go up year over year. So planning for that in the future for those softer years when we have good years makes a lot of fiscal sense to push through over that 5-year forecast period. Again, David's going to jump into the next phases, but again, the biggest thing that we saw here is the 8.8%. Last year was 13, so it is trending downward, which David will get to, but again, it's still a very positive year. I think we projected we needed 2.5 3% to break even. So we exceeded that. And that's why you see some of these dollars being available to move back to the reserve.
I have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned, I believe, the rehab of the fire department building. You mentioned an amount. Was that $1 million? Did you mention an amount that was
For-
projected for the rehab of the,
Oh, yeah, it's about $1 million, a little bit less. It
and how?
depends on what we want to do. So we just took a very conservative estimate. Because we could do something as simple as just demo and pave and call it a day. If we feel a little bit that is creative, if we did a few of the other things, it adds some dollars. If we want to do roll up doors as a 2, do we put in a couple of public bathrooms? It's kind of a good idea when we have events there. Those things would really start to move the cost around. But that's why PGAL, our architects, are looking at, structurally, what are we taking out? What's left behind? Because basically we got to cut off the old station. We need the bays to stay, and we got to rehab the bays because it was left in pretty rough shape. So we're going to have to do some rehab in the old bays that a little more extensive than we initially anticipated, but not, I'm talking, 50 to 100 grand worth of rehab to the bay areas, repaving, cleaning, stuff like that. Redoing some wall space that were damaged, but it's a good shape. So we have basically $1 million as a holder. So like I said, when we get to what's the final project, more could shake out because it seems a pretty bit ambitious project. Because we can only go to 938,752 based on the CPI multiplier to the 900,000. So no matter what, we're kind of at the cap, whatever our charter limit cap is all, because we didn't get authorization to fix that.
Right.
So that has to stay in that cap range.
Well, yeah, so we're gonna go through, we got about 30 or so slide, I think probably less now, but so.
Excuse me, answer that. Just a quick question.
Time for a restroom breaks.
At what point does the FAB, the Financial Advisory Board, get involved with this, or have they, or at what point do they get?
It's a good question. So we planned it based on their feedback and comments earlier in the process. Traditionally, they hadn't got to it till August, and they felt a little taken out of the loop. So you make a great point. So they're going to, next week, Thursday, they're going to hear the same presentation. So if there's something you want them to look at, thank you for bringing this up, Vice Mayor. So if there is something you want them to look at, you could give us that direction today so the FAB can focus on something. If something that doesn't make sense, or what should we do in this scenario, or you just want their general feedback, that'll be next Thursday. So they'll be earlier because the next meeting for us is July 23rd, where we'll set the tentative maximum millage rate as our first move under the state statute. We got to do that on the July 23rd, which is the 3.5875, which we've had now for 4 years, is to keep that same rate or lower. So you can always adjust it later. We can never go higher. So.
All right, so this is right here is an interesting chart, right? These are the blue columns are your property values, right? We're almost approaching $4 billion. And the line here is the percentage change between the two. So you'll see that our property values between 19 and 20, FY 19 and FY 20, rose by about a little bit less than 5%. 20 to 21, it was down to the 2.3%. Same thing for 21 to 22, 3.3%. And then 22 to 23, we shoot up 13%. 23 to 24, we shoot up again, another over 13%. And now what we're seeing is it start to come down a little bit, which staff and management, obviously trying to be conservative, saw this coming. The other interesting thing too, right? This right here is inflation for our MSA area, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, right? You'll see that curve there adjust as well. And so when we look, we said, okay, right now, all of our revenue, 76% of the general fund's revenue is ad valorem tax dollars. Okay. And so we see that right now we got notice. It will probably be around the 8%. There'll be a little bit. The next phase, which the property tax appraiser will come out, will be the July 1st numbers. Those are the final numbers that we go forth. And so, but on average, over the last 5 years, about when you take all those numbers into consideration, we're at about 7.5%, rising. Inflation, thank God, has come down a little bit, but property values obviously won't be going down. They'll just probably grow at a lesser rate.
Mhm.
And so that's what we're preparing for. And so what we talked about, now there's going to be a lot of moving parts here because we came off of balancing two fire departments, right? We were
Right.
holding Delray, right? Meanwhile, we're building our own fire department, right? And so construction costs, right? So we had to bring that in. We had to bring that money, the money that we borrowed from the bank, a little less than $5 million. We had to bring that in to our revenue as other sources of funds. Well, now what we're looking at is we're saying, okay, now that we're at kind of the sediment is settling down, what's normalcy? And so what we're looking at is we're saying, okay, look, we have our operating millage here proposed. It's going to grow at about 5.75%. That's typical for salaries, general increase, insurance, all those general increases. We have the fire department's debt service millage that we put in there, but that was substantially less than the water millage that we had. And this year, what we're proposing is we're not going to have a water millage. The reason why is one of the goals that we established was that we want our enterprise funds, our water and our sewer funds to stand on their own. Okay. And that was the goal. And I think that we've achieved that. The other goal that we wanted to achieve through our 5-year forecast was to maintain 3.5875. So now let's look at what that does. So taking these into consideration, we roll through the budget process. Again, this right here just visualizes it. This right here is your total millage. Okay, you can see here, this right here in 2023, that's when we started our 3.5875. That's what we're holding. That's the line we're holding. And you can see that's how, what was it made up of? Well, a general operating and the water millage, right? Then we switched last year, we switched to, hey, we're going to have a general operating cost. We're going to have the new fire department millage there, and we're still going to have the water. Well, now as we look forward to 2025, getting rid of the water because that's going to stay the same, right? We're shifting now the general fund, the fire department debt service will go there, still less than the water and our operating millage, but our goal is to still maintain that millage rate. All right, now we're going to get into some of the numbers. First thing we're going to look at is the general fund. And so when you look at, as we previously discussed, these right here are all the sources of revenue for your general fund. And so you can see there that property taxes obviously is the lion's share. If you remember, in 2024, if we take out, let's just remove the fire department, managing 2 fire departments, the construction, all that jazz that went into that budget. Let's just take that out. We were at about a $16.1 million general fund budget. Okay. Then what happens when you add kind of back all of the dual fire departments, the construction cost and whatnot, with that 16.1 went up to about 22.9. Now, so now what I want to try to compare is I want to try to compare normal 2024 16.1 to what we're proposing here. So we're at about a $17.5 million budget. Okay. These right here are the specific line items. You'll see here, see the bottom here, other financing sources. That there is the money we had to bring in for the fire department. But you see now it's zero. Okay. You see here that if you recall, we took $4 million from our excess reserves and we dedicated that to this monumental task. And you were successful at doing that. And you can also see here what's the main driver of our revenue obviously is property taxes right here. And so this right here is kind of the change in it. So the other change too that you'll notice, remember last year we got hit with solid waste. Remember solid waste increased as well, right? So that increase and there you'll see that solid waste charges for services. That's what that is. That's the garbage collection. And so we saw that. So those were kind of the bigger shifts. Right now, we're still being very, very conservative, but overall, we're down about 23%. The reason why is because the thing that's driving that decrease in needing that much revenue is the fire department, okay? But again, no additional reserves that we need to pull in and no increase in the millage rate. So let's move forward. These right here are your expenditures, okay? And so big picture. So what we have is we have, look at here, look at these two lines. See your personnel services, see how much that grew, but look at your operating expenses. Look how much that went down. You know what that is? The operating expenses were your Delray contract. Oh, okay. So what we're doing is we're switching an
Substituting.
operating expense through Delray providing our fire service to our own staff providing our fire service with the concierge type of fire rescue department that you expect. And so again, you also see the other thing too that we added a line item here, reserve for contingencies. I added that this year. The reason why is I wanted to make sure that we had a good full year under our belt with the fire department, right? I know everything's new. And I know that it's running perfectly right now. I just wanted to have a little bit of cushion there for my own sanity. And so the other thing too that this budget anticipates is bringing in over $642,000. We start to replenish our reserves. If you remember, last year at this time, you had a decision to make. You put $250,000 back into the reserves. That was more of a, let's get ready for future years. We're going to have to be replacing fire trucks, fire engines, and whatnot, equipment. So let's get ready for that. Let's start replenishing our reserves. And so that's what we did here. And so you can see that. The other thing too is that we have a level debt service. That loan is 3.26%. It's a great loan. You structured it perfectly, perfect timing. Everything was good about that. Again, no transfer. If you recall, we used to get money into the general fund and we then would have to transfer it over to the water fund so that they can pay their debt service. No more of that for now, unless you have a different direction. So.
And
Yeah,
we're
yes.
according to plan. We're according to plan on that, right? Was it
Yeah.
this year that, or we are a year early
Yeah,
in
no,
doing that?
I'll show
We're,
you.
we
When
are a
get to
part of the plan.
water,
Right.
Well, when you get to the water, you'll see that this year, we reduced our debt service on the water by 370,000. This year, we do it another 375,000. And then for, I think, 2032 or something like that, something crazy, it's level debt service payments, and then we'll see it. But yeah, we'll go through that. So these right here are, again, general fund expenditures. Now, all I'm doing in the next slide is I'm breaking this number down here, the 17 million. I'm breaking that down by departments. So you can see, remember, we're still in the general fund. We haven't gotten out of that. So now this is what your departments look like. You see, one major thing that we did is the town manager. We took out legal here. See, it's 0, and we moved that cost over to the town manager. It probably should be there. We don't have any staff in legal. And so you know what, we'll move it into there. He has better control over that. The other thing too that you'll notice here is our post office, right? You see our post office there. If you recall, we closed that in June, not at our doing, but more, we were forced to close it down. But you'll also see too that fire rescue right here, right? We see fire rescue. Remember, this, our estimate for 2024, that includes the construction. That includes a lot of the construction costs and things like that. But at the end of the day, that $17 million, that's how it breaks down
So questions I know that the FAB will get, so I'll get it in case if it's not crossing your mind. You'll see our conservative operating for fire is $5.7 million. Delray's cost to us this current year, if you took the 7 months over the year, is 6.2. So right there, we're $500,000 less than we would a year about. So if you take their number and you add 7%, which is their general increase year over year, we've seen that takes them to 7 million. So we're about $1.2 million less than Delray. Holding that model and projections that we did collectively to make this decision
Mhm.
is holding
Yeah.
as we anticipated. So that it's moving as we guessed it would.
Right.
So it really worked. I mean, it's a really great decision.
Oh,
And it's working well.
it's a phenomenon. At any conventions that I go to, that's what I tout. I mean, do you see what my town did? You
Mhm.
know, and so it's an amazing feat, but and I think we're being conservative. I just learned that everyone else is switching to that new model where they added the shift, things like that, except Delray hasn't shifted to that yet. They were going to be in there. But, you know, we're able to control cost. We're able to direct what our town's firemen and women do. We're going to be offering the inspections to the condos associations, where in the past, Delray would charge you for that. So now, you know, we're not doing that. And so all around, it's great news.
I think you should point out that we are saving money over that and we have an extra shift. So it's even a bigger savings than it originally seemed to be.
And that model is going that way. And I think
Yeah.
Delray's union has a tentative deal with administration there that they're going to it. So their cost is only going to be accelerated to that.
Right.
And I'm sure, I know the county's negotiating with the county fire rescue. I can only imagine what that conversation entails, which is 24/72. And I think that's really the model that's going to be deployed across the county in time.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So that 5,784,000, is that our baseline annual cost, or is there any extra in there
That's-
from the build out?
That's from salaries to healthcare to insurance to diesel fuel to subcontractors,
Yep.
uniforms.
That's our, that's
Vehicle
our
repairs.
starting
Yep.
annual
Yep.
cost.
Yep. Yep.
And, okay, that's our baseline. Okay.
So again, that just breaks it down. You have the line item detail there. You can go to that section there. Next is, well, let's look at our fund balance. Okay, now, what is our fund balance? Our fund balance is almost our pile of cash that hasn't been budgeted yet. It's our reserve. And so we're back to healthy. Look at here. These right here are the buckets that we have. You have a portion of your $7 million. So let's start out. So right now, this right here is your beginning balance. That's from the audit, right? We're going to put $250,000 in it from your direction that you wanted to replenish the fire. So that brings it up to 7.3 million. Okay. Now, what's it going to be based on this budget? Well, what we're going to do is we're anticipated to put another $642,000 back in to replenish the reserves from the $4 million. And so therefore, what would our fund balance look like? Well, we have a budget stabilization per resolution of 2.8, a disaster recovery of 2.8. There's the fire rescue that we put in there to start replenishing it. And here I have unassigned $2.055 million, unassigned that we can move that. We can put a portion of it back in there, leave it in there for remodeling costs that we need for the former fire place. And so at the end of the day, your fund balance, your reserves for the long term, we're starting to build that up and they look very healthy.
So what I would correct David slightly, not that I want to, but he used the old fire station. That's budgeted. So you're still doing this and
Yes.
tackling the old fire station at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I apologize. You're absolutely right. See this? this is where we put it. This is where that old fire department will be. See Public Works? This is Public Works right here. Do you see, we bumped that up. We added $1 million right there into Public Works. That was our placeholder. That's typically where it would go. It's a public facility, belongs in Public Works. And so thank you for bringing that to my attention. So the general fund looks extremely healthy. We're working our plan. We have excess surpluses. We're able to put money aside in the budget for redoing the former fire department. We're able to replenish our reserves without raising the millage. And so it's going exceedingly well.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So for 2024, the appropriations to reserves is at 250,000.
Yes.
Are we on track for the 250,000?
Absolutely.
So I guess an observation, I really like how, like in the past, I felt like the appropriation to reserves was a little, what actually went to reserves was a little different than what was planned. So I like that since you've taken it over.
Yeah.
It has been, and I know you can't always guarantee that, but my observation is that when you estimate an appropriation to reserves, that is what comes to fruition. So
Yeah.
I like that about the budget process is
No.
that it is, coming out to what you are estimating
Yep.
it to be, because then we can kind of count on
Right.
that. So
And remember
good.
this one here, for those that are watching on TV, this right here is, look at, I got a $300,000 contingency in there.
so it might be
Yeah.
900,000, depending on if we have to use
Right.
that contingency. Okay.
Plus, I've got $1 million.
Right,
place-
you've already
place over
accounted
here
for the
that.
fire.
Right.
So,
So, when I look back, what this commission has been able to do to build their own fire department, to save money from our former contract that provided fire services, to have the ability to control costs and to start to replenish reserves for that next generation of people that will be enjoying Highland Beach. It's just a phenomenal job.
another observation I'd say is I really like how the team really thinks about what you anticipate spending will need to be. I feel like you've really quantified what we expect to have to spend in the near future, as opposed to perhaps putting those things into a broader bucket
Right.
and having to tap into it. Like I do really, it sounds like to me that 642, especially the 642, maybe the 942, you've already accounted for everything.
Yeah.
So there hopefully won't be any reason to raid that. So that's just another observation I would like to make.
The management and we went through it. We were trying to, and again, as you know, I like to be conservative on my revenues and, aggressive on my expenditures. Because, if I'm gonna have a bad day, I'd rather that more cash drops to the bottom line than not. So, so that's the overall general fund, full service town providing concierge service. We should be on every magazine in the world at this point. Anyway, so now what we're doing is we're going to a separate fund. Okay, so we're out of the general fund and we're going to go into a separate fund still under our control, and that's the discretionary sales tax fund. Now, what is the discretionary sales tax fund? I wanted to just give you a little brief story here, right? And so it applies to the first $5,000 of any single taxable item, a motor home or mobile home, vehicle, boats, aircrafts. And apparently there's a lot of those purchases in Palm Beach County. But anyway, but here's the other thing too, that we should notice about this. This one expires 2026, okay? So now, so what do we do with that fund, right? It's an extra, it's that one extra percent that when something is bought in Palm Beach County, they give the town of Highland Beach their proportionate share based on the population. And so historically, it's been around, if we look here, actuals in 2023 is about $422,000 in change. Already year to date through April, I'm at $241,000 that we've accumulated. We still got many, many months to go. So I'm anticipating, we'll get about $413,000 this year. So I was a little bit conservative there. I said, all right, you know what, we'll get $415,000 and change in. I got some investment earnings there. And so what do we do with that? Well, that's when we replenish a lot of our capital assets, vehicles, ATVs, whatever long-lived. We don't use it to pay the electric bill. We don't use it to pay salaries. We don't use it we use it for more tangible capital, your major capital costs. Boats, we bought, I think one year we bought your marine boat with it. And so it is good, but keep in mind, in the future, you and your staff, we try to plan out 5 years. We have this on our horizon that in 2026, that $400 is gone. So we're anticipating that. So anyway, so up here is your revenues. Again, our budget, we match revenues and expenditures. Okay. And so we think that we're gonna spend about $711,000, and I'm sorry, that's how much revenue we're gonna have come in, and we're budgeted right now to spend it all. And here's what we're gonna spend it on: a lot of public work stuff, right? So you see, as we talked about in earlier slides, our AC unit in town hall, some PLC switches, the front entrance, right? The front entrance doors and things like that, that we're gonna do. We got some road and bridge work, a lot of that engineering, things like that. We got the Bellito Bridge that we are responsible for. So again, the Axon, you remember the police department, you remember they came in and they needed the body cameras and things like that. That's like a 5-year commitment. So we included that. So out of all of those, so back here, let's go back. This right here is what we're planning on spending, $711,000. And these are the capital things that we're going to invest in. We need a beach utility vehicle to ride up and down the beach. The salt water really damages our existing stuff. Some of our other stuff is belt driven, which doesn't seem to be too reliable in this atmosphere. But let's say we spend all that. So here's our fund balance. So here's going to be our fund balance. So we're going to go from $671,000, right? And we're going to spend, we're anticipating that, let me back up. If I'm only bringing in $415,000, I need to pull the rest, $273,000. I need to pull that for this fund's reserve. So that's what that shows right there. That's what that 279 is. So not only am I going to use the money that we're going to get in from the state of Florida, but I'm also going to use up some of our excess reserves here that we have $600,000, but that still leaves us $392,000 left. So that's what we do with that fund. That's it. It's an in and an out. And that's what we would do with that fund. Now,
Are the discretionary funds, is that applicable to all the things we have to spend, or is it limited to certain things?
it's usually limited to capital related.
Long-standing assets. It has to have a life
Yeah.
generally over 3 years if you can.
Yeah.
It's generally kind of our benchmark to use those dollars. We tend not to spend them every year. So that number, kind of like how the reserves what drops out. It depends on what we get to, how much the actual costs are, but it's usually heavy we don't do water and sewer assets out of that, because water and sewer through the fee structure covers its own capital. Building department capital doesn't. So basically you're thinking your public safety library is basically what you're using that for.
Yeah, those items there.
Mhm.
Yep. But, keep in mind that it does end, it does end in December.
And so when it ends, Do you close out this fund at some point?
Yeah, so what'll happen is, as you'll see, just like anything else that ends, it stops trickling in. And you spend out the remaining balance of it, and that'll go away.
And then you just close it out?
Yeah,
and
you just
then-
close it out. And so what happens is, in the future, when you need these items, you get it. That's the general fund. These right here are general fund departments.
Okay.
Public Works, right? Police, fire safety, whatever. Maybe I need a new 10 key calculator, where you throw it in. But anyway, but yeah, these right here are kind of the things that we look at. So now what we're going is, so we left the general fund. We talked about your discretionary sales tax fund. Okay. Now we're going into the building department.
Excuse me, one quick question.
Yes, sir.
The discretionary fund that's ending, is that by legislation that it ends at that point?
Yep.
So something may happen in its place.
Well, the
Depending on-
county elected not to move forward with that.
Right.
They would rather do something else for themselves in their road program, I believe, is what they decided with the TPA, is to do roads versus this universal one, and the schools ventured out on their own as well. So the local communities are not going to have this fund available for them. So
Yeah.
it truly is coming to an end unless something happens, but I just don't see it in the political horizons that the county wants to do this. So.
Are we forced to spend it all by that date?
No, I don't believe we're forced to spend it all. That's just when the water valve that trickles in gets shut off, right? And so we're still committed. It is still what we would call a restricted fund. It's restricted. And so, yeah, we would just spend out the remaining balance.
My strategy is we spend those dollars first though, before we spend ours. So
Yeah.
don't worry.
Yeah.
They'll be spent before we spend
Yeah.
our reserve dollars.
Right, yeah.
Is the idea to set up another reserve to keep funding this or under some other name
No,
after that?
no, this right here this is that extra penny. Right, for those major purchase, the state of Florida even sends it to us separately than your ad valorem taxes and things like that. So it is very separated. Once it's gone, then we'll just spend this down, so we will average, we might have, it might carry us forward. So let's see. So if this ends in 2026, it might take us 2027, 2028, right? To say, hey, listen, guys, it's almost like the ARPA funds, right? The government gave us the money. We said, all right, and yep, we're scheduled to be done with that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So now we're in the building department. Your building department is, like everything else in Highland Beach, phenomenal. And at the end of the day, no. So again, and as you're aware, charges for services, permits, things like that, that makes up the lion's share of it. This fund is obviously still benefiting from that great decision that this board made to enter into an interlocal agreement with Gulfstream to continue. And so what we have is we have the revenues we're being very, very conservative with, how much that's going to increase. Our investment earnings, again, I was just trying to be conservative in what I think we're going to earn on interest, but it's just very, very conservative. So this one here, we're anticipating that it'll go up by $345,000. Now, the biggest driver of that is, you'll see here, we're going to pull some money out of the building department's excess reserves. Okay. So the building department, just like the discretionary sales tax fund, has its own kitty of reserves, just like the general fund has its own kitty of reserves. Well, so does the building department, right? And so we're anticipating that they're going to pull some of that out. And so right now, but here are the costs. This is the cost to run your building department. So you have your personnel costs, you have your operating expenditures, which the operating expenditures is that hybrid model that we use with CapGov, where inspection services, we don't have to carry the full labor burden of having an inspector in-house. we offshoot that to a third-party contractor. They do it on our behalf, obviously under the building department supervision. And so, but what we are going to do is, we kept the transfers the same, right? We kept the transfers the same at 500,000. What's that transfer? Well, that's the transfer from the building fund into the general fund, right? It covers overhead. Okay, that's the idea. And what I have to do every year as part of the audit, I've got to defend that dollar amount. So what I do is I take a certain percentage of all of our salaries, labor, pension, health insurance costs, and I allocate that, and I show the auditors the allocation to justify that as far as that goes. And so what are they going to be doing? Let's look back here. So what I have here is I have that they're going to do about $412,000. They're going to use up some of their excess reserves for some capital that need to be done over there in the building department. So what are they going to do? Well, they're going to office improvements over there. They're going to, that department there, since a lot of the wear and tear on this side of our complex is more trucks and heavier vehicles, things like that. The building official graciously said that he would contribute that amount of money to help repave our roads here. They got some software and some other equipment, but look it up here. They have 485 days of operating cash. So if we don't get another building permit, if we don't get another call over there for over a year, right, this fund can survive. And so again, very healthy fund balance. We're going to use the excess funds that are in their fund balance. We're going to use that to do some of these capital improvements that they will benefit from, but also the town will benefit from. Now let's go into the water. So again, water revenues, have increased. We're anticipating as part of our 5-year program, and we'll see where debt service falls off and so on and so forth. But we'll see where we have our 8% water rate baked into these numbers here, right? I'm just being conservative with our investment earnings. See this interfund transfer, right? That there, see how it's down? So the general fund is not going to be sending the water fund money anymore. Preliminary. Obviously, you get to make those decisions. I just provide you with the data. But at the end of the day, that's why that one there went down. And so what they're going to do is historically, we've always balanced the budget by pulling from excess reserves. So let's see what that looks like. But before we do that, let's just look at some history of our water, right? And so here, the top line here, this is gallons. We measure water in thousands of gallons. And so you can see here, the reason why we do this, it takes out the effects of any rate increases, right? So I'll show you where our revenue looks like with the rate increases, but just let's look at the raw gallons that we're using. Now, keep in mind, we have 6 billing cycles, 1 through 6 for this fiscal year, 1 through 6 for this fiscal year. Right now, we're right here. I estimated what we're going to do here, a conservative estimate. That way I can kind of get at where do I think we're going to be at the end of the year. So this right here is water. Again, compared to the prior year in 2003, usage is anticipated to be up by almost 8% through the first 3 cycles. I know that we have seasonality. Typically, we have one month or one cycle where seasonality, obviously everyone goes back up north, water doesn't start to use. We don't see so much seasonality here with irrigation. Matter of fact, that's when irrigation starts to pick up, right? The hot summer months, things like that. So we are seeing irrigation is up about 1.3%. So this is gallons used. We're estimating these last 3 quarters because we're not there yet. And so now let's look at the dollars. Well, what did that do? Now what we're looking at is we're looking at water revenue up here in dollars, and we're looking at irrigation revenue in dollars here. So overall, with usage, as usage increases, as well as rates increase, that translates into here that overall we're anticipated to be up almost 11% through the first 3 cycles of 24. And we're looking like we're going to be up by almost 11% for irrigation through the first 3 cycles of 24. Now, a lot of that has been achieved with making sure that we change out our meters. We have older meters. Meters don't slow down as they get, meters don't speed up as they get older, they slow down. So we tend to watch this very carefully. Overall, here are our expenditures. So we anticipated a 5% increase in staff salaries and related. We did the same thing with our operating expenditures. We're anticipating chlorine, things like that. We tried to be very, very cognizant or focus on what those costs for operating expenses were going to be. Capital outlay, we estimated about $500,000 here. Look at the debt service, and we'll get to that next. But look at the debt service drops off. Our mortgage payment was in the millions of dollars, right? Now it drops off to $810,000, and so that's a good thing. We have reserve for contingencies, and again, we have transfers there. So everything here is working according to plan. This right here is your debt service. That's where we're at right now. These right here are your notes. I'm hoping in my lifetime that we get to see these interest rates again. But I'm not going to hold my breath. But anyway, these right here are all the different types of loans that we have that are in the water department. This is when they mature. This is the interest rates that we have. And so when we get to this right here is the balance, $5.17 million at the end of FY25. That's what we'll still have to do. But the good news is we reduce another $370,000 this year, just like we did this year and next year. Let's look at fund balance. Let's look at how many days cash does this fund have if we never sell another 1,000 gallons of water, right? And so that's what this is. If you recall, we had to transfer funds for the fire department, rightfully so. We transferred the ARPA funds from the water and sewer departments. We transferred that about $1.5 million. We transferred that from the water and sewer fund to get the fire department up and running and ready. But at the end of the day, we'll have 131 days of unrestricted fund balance available to us.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, the subtitles, they both say fiscal year 2025.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
So is one
Error.
2024?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yes, this right here should be 2024.
Okay,
This right here is from our audit
okay.
from 2023, our beginning balance. A good catch. I'll correct.
Oh,
Thank
that's no big deal. And then, so I'll just, an observation, the minimum that the water consultant recommended was, I think, 120 days, of cash, operating cash on hand. So, we're there. And I think the other thing I remember is this is like the low point. I think from here, the projections show that the days of cash grow.
Right.
So we are at the bottom point.
Yep.
And hopefully going forward, in next year's.
Yeah.
That days of cash will
Yeah.
only go up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this right here is what we're anticipating to spend, see that 560 right there, that 560 is, let me go back, is right there. I'm sorry, capital outlay, 560 right there. right? So these right here, other than your operating personnel, your operating expenses, here's your capital outlay, here's your debt service, here's your transfers. We have a little bit, $25,000, which we typically put in for the water fund. But this is how it's allocated. You know, it is a nice when you look at the $100 bill graphic there, right? It is a well-balanced water fund, you know, where we have the appropriate amount here for labor, pensions, insurance, workman's compensation. And then you have your operating expenditures here. You have your capital outlay here and you have your debt service here. And so it is very, very well balanced. And so again, I think what's helping is obviously the debt service dropping off. And these right here are for FY25, these right here are the capital dollars these are the things that we plan on replacing. And still, after we replace that, we'll still have about 131, what I call operating days cash. What operating days cash is, that's just operating expenditures. That's not any capital. And then I added another one here, funds including CapEx, just to give us a ballpark of where we think we'll be. But again, these come into play. What these come into play with is if we have to go out for bonding or we have to raise additional money, right? All these things are what the rating agency looks like. Before this fund wasn't able to stand on its own in order to get its own financing. That's why it had to rely on the general fund as a backstop. I'm not saying that's ever going to go away, but at the end of the day, the more healthier you can show your water and sewer fund, the ability to sell bonds on the open market can be easy.
Do we anticipate a point where we're going to have to have more debt, where things get worn out and need to be replaced?
I don't think so. I think we can manage it with cash on hand and the rate structure. We do a good job, as you've been through there. The guys take a really good care of that water plant. It's still figuring, you know, it's what, 12 years old and it's spotless, you know. And they take care of the trains. They do all these capital projects, like the port seals and rings, right? If you don't do that, like what is that? If you don't do that, those treatment trains they basically explode and fall apart, and then you got to spend, you know, $500,000 to get a whole new. But if you keep maintaining them, back flush, rotate, so our maintenance schedule is pretty good. So I think we'll be okay. But there'll be some years where you might have just your capital project might be like the whole treatment section, one whole strand. So I think right now we're good. The structure is in good shape. We're taking care of the acid tanks. Those will last a while. The degasifier. I mean, we're taking care of some of those bigger rusting items you see out there. So
water and sewer is predicated.
Here's another, I'll jump in. So what we did, so Sergio and Pat looked into this. Instead of, you know, waiting, anticipating repainting of the elevated storage tank and the maintenance of the storage tank, we entered into an annual contract. So they're obligated under that period of time to undertake all the internal improvements, the painting the exterior, but we take care of it over time by paying an annual premium to them to do it. They take care of everything. And if something breaks earlier, they're obligated under contract to move forward that in the capital period. So that's the risk they take with their planning for us. But we do that every year, so you don't have a big, you know, $600,000 tank painting project or something of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And with water and sewer, it's like owning a boat, right? It's constant maintenance. And so you want to make sure that your staff is appropriately investing in capital outlay. Otherwise, it becomes deferred. And what happens when it becomes deferred is it just costs more money in the future. And then it's just exacerbating, you know. And so we're doing a good job there. Again, 131 days of cash on hand, which is good. It's healthy. We would have had more, but it would have just been sitting there. And so remember, we transferred the funds that we received from the federal government to the fire department. to finish that. Now let's look at the sewer. So let's look at the other side, right? Sewer is a little bit different. Here's why. We don't have staffing there. We have lift stations, right? But I will tell you that sewer is a lot more corrosive, a lot more capital intensive. When something breaks, it's a big problem, you know? And so that's the focus there. So again, we've added the grant revenue here. Now you see 400, you see, I can't see that far anymore, $430,000 or whatever for grant. Well, that's a combination of the ARPA funds plus I was conservative. I'll adjust that. I think it's 275 or right now my preliminary budget had 250 in there. But at the end of the day, and we also anticipated a rate increase. And so we're going to achieve that. Here's what's happening on the wastewater side. Just like you should see a correlation between the amount of water that people use, right, versus the amount of water that gets treated. Now, we in the water and sewer industry, we don't bill you the same because we understand that you're watering your garden, you're cleaning the cars. So usually the rates reflect that so much. And now that here, what we do is we don't charge you anything above a certain gallon. You know what I mean? And so let's say you use 30,000 gallons of water. You only be billed on the sewer side, I think, by 10,000 gallons, because we understand that not all of that is going down the pipe and being treated. So it is fair. And so we can see here, right? We saw that water was at about 11% increase, right? All right, sewer's about almost a little bit, a 10% increase, right? The reason why is because it's not all being treated. Keep in mind, Delray also treats our sewer. So we're responsible for the collection and the pumping between, I think we have 6 lift stations, right? Those are critical. We have to keep dual pumps in them because they start with one fails, we need a backup. Okay. You always need a redundancy, especially on water and sewer. And so we can see here, you see, okay, you remember, I have through 3 cycles. So this right here is actual, okay? And this is what I'm forecasting now. This is treatment, okay? Because we don't use sewer. And this right here is this, what this represents is this usage multiplied by the rate per thousand. So this right here is the rate revenue, but we're still seeing that increase, which is good. And so on the expenditure side, what are we looking at? Well, we're looking at operating expenditures going up a little bit less than 5%. Our capital outlay, right? We're looking at about $450,000, and I'll show you what we're going to be replacing in our capital outlay. We have a transfer. So what does this fund do? This fund here transfers funds over to the water department. The reason why is because the water department and sewer department, they work hand in hand. The water department has all your labor and retirement savings and health insurance and all that cost. So it makes sense to transfer a little bit over. But notice we might have to relook at that because it looks like for the last 3 years, we've kept the transfers the same. 220, 220, 220. So we may look at kind of possibly rebalancing that. Let's look at what some of the new numbers are, okay? But we'll look at that. And you can see this right here is your operating expenditures. You remember there's no labor cost in there, okay? Direct labor costs. And so we had a slight increase. Remember that the increase in our operating expenditures is based on our contract for sewage treatment with Delray. So that's what happens in that fund there. But now let's look at their fund balance. Let's look at how much excess they have for future repairs. So remember, we transferred funds from this fund over to the fire department. We have almost 400 days. This right here are the major projects that we're going to be looking at for 2025 to redo. So that's why back here, when I was looking at how healthy this system was here, that's why here I was looking at, oh, maybe, you know what, maybe we need to rebalance that a little bit, you know, maybe just to be fair, you know. So we'll look at that on kind of our next rendition of this. But right now, I didn't want to muddy up the water with a bunch of changes because we just came off of a big change. Fire department's done. Fire personnel, no more water being the general fund transferring money over. So there was just a lot of moving parts. I wanted to keep certain things the same in this first round. But again, healthy, it's got a healthy fund balance there to tackle these things. What are the next steps? Well, this is today. I'll be meeting with the FAB kind of to walk them through, see what they want to do, see if they like what they're seeing, see if they like the moves, get their feedback from them. We'll meet again in July. What we'll have to do is we'll have to set the maximum millage. We'll have to set the maximum, which doesn't mean it's going to be the millage. It's just the maximum. We can't go above it. But right now, your staff are confident that we don't have to raise that. And then we keep having meetings and we keep on looking at this until our September deadline when we have to pull the trigger on this. But I know that's a lot. You have the detail in front of you. Staff will be continuing to look at water, sewer, looking at other types of expenditures, rebalancing some things. The next rendition we'll look at where we're at in 2025 versus our original, that was in 2023 when we did that original 5-year forecast. We'll look at what we had anticipated. We have to account for obviously inflation. We saw where inflation is starting to come down, but in 2023, we were all scared about where inflation was going to go. So, but it's all good. It's all good news, in my opinion. So.
Will we get a printout of all these pretty slides?
Absolutely, whatever you want.
David, do we get any franchise fee from the cable or that, or does the county get that, or is that in a surtax?
Yeah, no, that is in our general fund.
All right.
So it's in our general fund back here. I'll show you. Let's go to the general fund. Good question. Oh, let me see. Okay, so this is general fund. This is let me see. Oh, let's go to revenues. So revenues, you see franchise fees.
Oh, right there.
Right there. It's about 3%. If you go over to the next one here, you can see it here, franchise fees. Right. Tell you. Yep.
Yeah, I was watching the meeting with the county with that surtax when they voted not to do that anymore. And they had all the small towns complaining because that's what they used to fix their roads and everything, but they still voted to get rid of it.
Yeah, do you see any yellow flags?
Yeah, yellow flags?
Yeah.
No. As I said before, this is how I believe our forefathers envisioned the town running itself. Even though other towns are scrambling because their discretionary sales tax are running out, to us, it's just a little minor speed bump and we'll figure it out as we go along. It's just an example of how things should be run. And again, we thank the staff, thank the board for your support and your direction, your long-term thinking. This is great. Now, we have to hedge on these increases, right? On this increase. Remember, over 76, 78% of our revenue comes from the general fund. So we've got to be careful. We gotta hedge on that. That's why your staff is looking at, all right, this is going to continue to go down, right? The rate of inflation is going to continue to go down. So where does that put us? That's why decisions today to keep certain rates the same, squirrel away in the good times, in the good season,
Right.
is just smart. Your debt levels are low, your interest rates are phenomenal. And in the future, we'll be fine.
I think that was the thought process behind the decision originally, which was don't lower it even though we can, because there's gonna come a day when we're going to need that little backup, because instead of increasing, it's gonna drop.
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
And so we need to prepare for that day.
Yes, yes, you do.
We need to be the squirrels.
Yeah.
So I would agree with increasing the allocation of the transfer for the sewer fund to the water. I think should definitely do that. And then I also agree with keeping the tax rate steady and the comments that were just made with respect to, you know, putting it into the reserves. I think we all like the stability
Mhm.
and, you know, making sure we have the minimum amounts
Yep.
that we need. And then now, you know, building up the reserves again, you know, even to the point where, you know, might be excessive because we know we're not going to have those increases every year and we don't know when they're going to stop. And so it's good to save those. I guess in general, I am very pleased with the debt service rolling off. I personally prefer that we don't borrow. I like to have a strong cash, you know, like I don't like to be leveraged, you know, so I guess I personally like the idea of letting these things roll off and that the town not be leveraged. So I really like the direction we're heading there, where all of that is rolling off. I'm very pleased with what you presented today. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for anticipating as much as possible the expenses, you know, that we have. And then I also very much appreciate your long-term planning. I know a lot of the result here is because of that 5-year forecasting that you implemented a couple of years ago. So I think that is really excellent. So yeah, I thought this was a really good news. Excellent news. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next item is public comments. Any?
We figured out how to thin the crowd.
Jack Cochran, 4511 Ocean Boulevard, and proud this month of June 2024 to be a 28-year resident of Highland Beach. I'm getting to be an old timer.
No.
Old timer. Great presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Excellent. And the numbers look great. And I think we're moving along. I just got 2 questions concerning the building department. I happen to see a gentleman back there knows also a lot about it. I think I got my answer for your financial presentation. Over the last year and a half, Jeff, we've gotten hit with the whole recertification, which has really meant a lot of permitting. When we get through this bubble, is that going to affect our permanent staff here? Or we've just been using outside consultants and will not affect our permanent staff when we get through this bubble?
Jeffrey, Miss Town of Highland Beach building official. So Jack, the answer to your question is it's not going to affect the staff.
That's what I want.
Right. We're bringing in plenty of revenue, and the really good decision to work with Gulfstream has been very helpful. And the percentage of fees, I don't have the exact number on me, but the percentage of fees that we're actually taking for the restoration projects is relatively low in comparison to the regular meat and potatoes of what we get done, if that answers your question.
Thank you, Jeff. I do have to admit, I was wrong a long time ago when me and others were against the Gulfstream. I think it's turned out to be a very valuable thing for this town and helping us and generates extra revenue and kind of keeps some of our people busy when there's low times here. So I think it's been a great idea. Thank you. The other one's a real quick question. That beach report that was done, is that available to be seen? Could it be put on the website?
I thought Skinder put it out there, but I will double check and email it to you.
Yeah, just let me know if it's on that. And thank you very much, as usual, everybody. Very much appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What's supposed to be in?
Next item, ordinances. We have none. Consent agenda. Any discussion on the consent agenda? If no, we could have a motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. No unfinished business. Moving on to new business. Item A, consideration of a professional services agreement with Wagner Legal Services, PLLC for special magistrate services.
Yes, we had a little bit of a foreshadowing at the last meeting. This is B, not this one, not this one, this is the next one. Okay. This is B. Okay, so I put this on here a little bit sooner than I wanted, just we're anticipating we're not gonna have a physical quorum here quite shortly for the code enforcement board. And we don't want to put our staff in a situation where code issues aren't properly addressed. So the idea is to bring Mr. Wagner on. The process is stipulated in the ordinance. Thanks for reminding me, Linelda, yesterday. So it's the exact same process, but instead of the board, you're going to have a special magistrate up here. So Len's looked at the contract. Everything seems good. So
Everything's good.
Yes.
And I know Mr. Wagner, he'll do a good job.
So he does a lot of big cities here too. So he understands our residents, Delray, Boca, Palm Beach Gardens, DeQuesta. So vast amount of experience, ready to go. Again, it's the same process. But this at least gives us a backstop to when we don't have enough code enforcement members to call a physical quorum. The risk to that too is that you may be able to hit a quorum with 4, but that looks terrible for due process when somebody has a right to 7 people to vote on their case and only 4 show up. So this gives us ability to keep continuity of operations as we decide what, if anything, we want to do with that.
His resume is outstanding. He obviously knows what he's doing in this area. And yeah, also sometimes personalities get involved and he has no dog in this fight.
Okay.
So his personality would not be in conflict with anyone appearing in front of him. So I think this is a great idea. We don't pay him unless he does something. It's all good.
I support it as well. I think it's a wonderful idea. I'm wondering, are we going to have discussion now about how it's actually going to work?
If you want, I just put this on just because I'm anticipating here in the next 6 weeks, we're going to be down to like 3 code members and no one's applying to be on the code board. So we're going to have a shortage. We knew we wanted to do this at least at a minimum for the very technical review points with fire and stuff, which I'll get to you in the manager's update. You know, some of these buildings are really behind on fire systems and there's going to be some pushbacks and you know, that's where you need a special magistrate really to handle these technical things and the risk that goes around it. So, but yeah, however, you know, the idea is you could use either one. You could bifurcate the process based on the type of case, or you just roll with the special magistrate until you get enough people and then you make that decision then.
I think it's particularly important to have that another level, professional level, and take it out of the realm that it's not your neighbor making some of these very important decisions, some very, very high price tags. And to apply the law strictly, I think it's a great idea. This is the only resume that's coming before us, is that right?
There was another gentleman that what was that firm?
Jones Foster.
Jones Foster, but it was like 3 times the cost. And the gentleman was really kind of on the way out with work rather than still in it. Didn't seem overly excited about it, or could be as a backup if we needed. Mr. Wagner was really good and appreciative and still in the game, still going, gets it active in this a lot more than the other gentleman. So just Len gave me the recommendation. These are the two that do a really good job. Wagner seems to do a lot. Len does it too, but he can't do both. So,
No, I cannot do both.
or we would have Len do it, but we gotta, break it up a little bit.
He has the time to allocate
Yep.
for us?
Yep.
I
It's
just,
an interesting conversation as a professor too. He,
Yeah.
it's an interesting conversation, really is.
just one, I support it. I just, one question. I'm watching the code enforcement meetings. If someone is on the agenda and they come up in a presentation and it said it's been satisfied, this, I would assume, comes off the docket and is not considered part of his duties?
Yep. If it's resolved, it's over. Yep.
Fine.
There's no
Correct.
judgment necessary.
Right. And we'll kind of make sure going forward that if all the cases get resolved, that we will just cancel the meeting.
Yeah.
But so to avoid incurring any costs.
Are decisions appealable?
They absolutely are.
Yeah.
So it's the same as for the board. You can appeal a magistrate or board's decision to circuit court within 30 days.
Will we have a transcriber? Will it be recording or transcriber?
We will record, I believe we record anyway. So, and that's all public record. Generally, if it's a contentious case, the respondent will bring a court reporter if they think there might be a likelihood of appeal. That's how you can tell if it's going to be a contentious case right off the bat. I do Jupiter, and if I come in, there's a court reporter, I know I'm in for some fun for that day, but yeah. So generally, we'll treat it the same way we've been treating it.
Okay.
So I'm in favor as well. I also, similar to Judy, should we talk about how this is actually going to get implemented? Can we talk about that today, or do you want to save that for another day?
We can.
'Cause I'm very
we
curious
certainly
about
can,
that.
And it could take multiple meetings too, because I'm not really sure how, if there's a, lawfully, our ordinance spells out how the meeting is to occur, whether it's the code board or the special magistrate. The ordinance says how you're going to conduct that meeting, what the process is, and it gives the option to us, either one. Now, what some communities do is they kind of bifurcate that process where they take, think of it like a class 1 violation. They keep it at a code board level. Think like always leaving your garbage cans out. Well, maybe neighbors would be fine, working together on those. Or it could be something that's like a class 3 where it would be, we've got a violation of the fire code system. Repairs of the fire code system is going to be, $600,000 and they're all broken. And the fire marshal's like, you got to fix this. Then you bring in a special magistrate that can come up with an order that matches the party's willingness to address it, takes neighbors out of forcing condos to incur these large costs. We've seen how this recertification program's gone. People have really pushed back on the legislator for doing this. So having a special magistrate on those kind of trickier cases is good. So either we can decide how we want to do that, if you want to do that, or do you just roll with the special magistrate for a while until you get a code board in? I've noticed here when we do get code, we've had a good code board, there's not a lot of training that goes into it. So we're taking lay folks and sitting them in that quasi judicial role where they're basically binding legal orders and we don't really train our residents. So maybe we got to do something in between too, but I'm open. I don't have any particular special magistrate for staff. Perp is easier. It takes all the risk that scares me every day that somebody says something they shouldn't. Or they, get overzealous and maybe say pass a big fine that isn't appropriate, or entertain a presentation from a defendant that's a little bit beyond the scope of the case, and it opens things up. Special magistrate kind of keeps it on point, but a code board tends to be a little more resident friendly, opens it up unless people talk maybe too much at times on too many issues. It really.
How many people on the code enforcement? board?
7.
That's how many, we have 7 members right
Yeah,
now.
4 are up in August and then 1 in September. And then I think we have 1 resignation
2 recently resigned.
So we have 5.
plus 4 coming off in August that are term limited. 3 are term limited. So, I mean,
Because that's what I saw. I saw someone is not on it anymore because
Yeah.
they missed too many meetings.
Right.
Yes.
So
we had-
that's 6. And then there's a resignation.
We had, well, yes,
So-
one person moved earlier this year, moved out of the town of Highland Beach. The other person, you all got the email. He's on vacation, but he missed 3 consecutive
Right.
meetings, and that deems him Right, resign.
So right now there's just 5.
And then we got
Right now,
4 up in August, 3 are term limited, so they can't do it again. So we're
yeah, you,
Pushing
not
it.
although we want to rush people on the code and board. I know you guys do a good job at vetting it, but like planning and we should, make sure, case in point, somebody wanted to be on it a few years ago and this commission was like, you seem to have an axe to grind. Maybe that isn't the board for you. So we want to make sure we get the right people. So we don't want to just throw people on just to have a quorum, you know, want to make sure we get quality residents that really want to contribute on this board. A lot of risk.
And how many are terming out? 4.
there's a total of 2 that's terming out completely.
When and what is the date of it?
September.
In September.
Yeah, September, we technically have five members. Their appointment in September.
So all the remaining members, all the remaining 5.
I think a couple can be reappointed. Jane and Miles, they're done. Their term, they hit the 2 3-year terms.
Then there's 3 that's eligible for reappointment, only 3.
Only 3.
So that'd take us to like
That's,
That would be
3 or
September.
4, yeah.
you won't have a quorum.
And even the point of 5 or
Right.
4 isn't really
Should have 7
fair
if you're gonna
because you
judge,
need,
you know, the
you
judgments.
need a unanimous decision in order, or just only one. So, so do we have Mr. Wagner on, so he's on backup now. As of
He's ready to go.
today, he's
He's
on
ready to go.
backup. So
If you
if for
approve the
some
contract,
reason,
he's ready to go. Yep.
and then if the next meeting, there's only 3 people, then it automatically
Goes to the magistrate,
Wagner does it. But in the meantime, I guess, do we want to discuss? We just leave it as the 5 until we get to, or maybe do we want to discuss once we get to 4? That's when
You know, this is tricky. This is where you guys get paid the big bucks. This is where it comes in. I would say you go with the special magistrate for a period of time. Just let the board
Right now.
sunset for a while, see how the special magistrate goes. If you're inclined to do it again, we do a big push to see if we can't get 7 folks that want to be on the code enforcement board. It's harder to get code. No one really, this is the first click. I know I have 2 former code people in here. Jack, you're on code, weren't you?
6 years.
Yeah, see, so I mean, like, it's, you know, people usually don't check that box. It's usually like item 4 on their selection list behind planning, FAB, Board of Appeals and Adjustment. So it's just harder to get folks because they have to be here all the time. And it's the same thing we're running with the FAB, where we changed the rules that you could have seasonal residents. Well, the FAB's got to do budget work in the summer. And then we struggle to get a quorum because they're all gone for the summer. And that's when we do all the budget work. So code boards, you need standing residents that are always here. And that's hard at times. It really is, especially when you have a quick turnover like this, to build that energy to get people back and to get good people back that really know what they're about to participate in.
Yeah.
That's the harder of,
At least with the FAB, they can go to the meeting via Zoom and still be, they can't view it, they can't vote, but they could be there so that they,
because everybody would, if you offer Zoom, nobody shows up.
And not only
So we're
that,
trying to get people to start getting the habit of coming back. And then you could do one-off onesie twosies on Zoom. But when all of a sudden everyone's like, I'll just do Zoom. We have an empty dais under statute, even technically for non-quasi judicial, you should have a physical quorum. So that's 4.
Not just technically, you should have
You
a
should.
physical.
Thank you, Counselor. And you need 4 always here, but it's just hard to get 4.
and then sometimes technology, there's glitch with technology.
The phone's looking at a ceiling fan. I just don't know who's watching, you know?
I'd like to hear public comments. Go ahead.
Term limited. So if someone, of these people who are dropping off, I heard 3 or 4 are term limited. Is there some point, a year later, can they reapply?
Yeah.
What's the,
Yes,
Mr.
1 year.
Attorney, what's
1
the,
year.
what's
I
that
don't know what
time
the-
period in between
1 year.
reapplying?
1 year?
1 year.
I can't remember what the ordinance said.
Okay.
1 year.
1 year. 1 year.
1 year.
1 year.
So if there are former code enforcement people out there like myself that was term limited after 6 years, but that was 10 years ago or whatever, we can reapply, and other people who are also term limited can also reapply after 1 year.
Correct.
I would be happy to get some publicity out on this. And any other openings that are out, I would like to get something out, because nothing against this gentleman who's the magistrate. I think we're better off with a Citizens Code Enforcement Board based on 6 years on it. I think people are involved, and I think it's good. So if that would be helpful, I'd be happy to do something in the next day or two and get a email out about any open positions. Is the information on the agenda correct in terms of all the openings?
Yeah.
Because we're gonna do
online
it,
it's-
might as well do it
it's
for
available.
everything.
It's available.
Yes.
They are correct, but we know there are some coming up in September, so.
Can I get a full list of what's coming up?
Sure.
Yes, the list is always put in the manager's monthly also, but you can get a
Okay.
full list.
Yeah, we'll get you one. Yeah.
Okay, if you could, and so I can parrot that back, and let's see what we can do working together and try and see if we can get something out and get it publicized, because I really think people care about this town. I think it's just hitting them and bugging them and letting them realize it. So let's see what happens.
I guess I'd also like to hear I hear your opinion. Is that what most people think about this code enforcement, whether we want to do it professionally or do we want?
Right.
Am I allowed to
Residents to
talk
do-
about, well, I guess it's public information about the magistrate.
Yeah. we can talk
Yeah,
about it.
and I'm going to put in my own opinion that I really don't think we want to be going to a magistrate, but you're being forced to go to a magistrate because of the lack of participation by people in this town.
I have a question for Jack. Why? Why is that your preference?
Uh,
Why are you negative? You seem negative towards a
magistrate?
magistrate, yeah.
Well, after being 6 years on the board, as I said, I think it's best that if people are involved, neighbors are involved, they understand the situation, they live here, they know the nuances of living here. And I think that's it. I don't know this gentleman from anywhere. And I think if we need to use a magistrate, we use a magistrate. We don't get people. Okay, we do it. But I think it's best if we can get our citizens to get involved.
Thanks, Jack.
You're welcome.
So my comments are this. I'm concerned when I hear that they're not trained, that our community people serving do not get requisite training, whatever that training is determined to be. To just come on and make an assumption that they know the code, they know how to, just all the things that could happen, might happen, and the understanding about the code and how much they could move off of it, or there's a lot going on when there's not training and when it's community. So for that reason, I like having, and I think we should have the special magistrate immediately be there for the backup and wait and see just what happens. Because I think we should have more of a discussion. I could see it, if we're going to have the community members still involved, heavily trained, properly trained, that I'd like the idea of a bifurcation of the more serious code violations, go to a higher authority, such as a magistrate. But I'd like to look at the ordinance, the code enforcement ordinance as a whole, really, I think, review it. This is an opportunity for us.
It's, the procedures are essentially statutory. They're uniform throughout every municipality. So basically our code reflects what's in chapter 162, which is the statutory authority. And as Marshall said, it's the same exact process with the magistrate and with the board. Years ago, when the legislature authorized the use of magistrates, they just said the magistrate could just be substituted for the board. So it's the exact same process.
Well, with respect to the quorum, how many, the terms of office, maybe there's a way that we can increase the viability, the attractiveness, maybe the training portion would be of interest and supportive by the community.
I agree basically with Judy. First off, I think we should approve this contract today. That I think it needs to be put into place. I think we need to operate with the magistrate at least for a little while, and then we can see how it works. And I also think that there may be a point where we want to bifurcate it, where something that is really serious gets handled by the magistrate as opposed to something that somebody didn't take their garbage cans back in, which there's a little more leeway with that. With a magistrate, everything's going to be cut and dried, and I understand where Jack is coming from, that everything would be cut and dried. But when you get up to some of these more serious infractions, then I want it to be cut and dried. On a lower level, I would like to see a little bit more give and take with the community. But I think we need to see how it works before we can make any real decision as to how it's going to play out in the future.
Does Ingrid go there, those meetings? Who goes, anybody
The
supervise?
code- Jeff and the code enforcement
does.
officer do
Right.
go to those. Adam predominantly, you know, if the decision is to go with code, I think we do need to really amp up our training program. We found, I don't want to get into any details, but there's been a couple of situations that are very unsettling to me. Some of you have heard them. We can't have them.
Right.
Just can't do it. So we have to do a better job training. If we're going to go with it, it's fine. We're going to have to really be intense on training how to conduct it in a semi-judicial setting. You know, it's staying focused on the case, not giving open platforms for people to go off or trying to be too friendly and loose when you're going to be making a judgment. So I think we got a little bit of work on both sides here to whatever that direction is.
I can just comment on my 6 years. And what would happen is when something came up, we were not trained. That is correct. But when something came up, we did a site visit. We had somebody from the building department came in. They explained what's going on. They told us what we were at. They told us what we needed to know to make a decision. So we were informed on that particular issue because there were different issues coming up all the time on the code enforcement. And you can't really, unless you go back to school for a long time, you're really not going to know. But the help of the building department when you're doing those site visits allows you to do that. And yes, I think you do need to sign this contract because if we don't get anybody, we need to be covered.
Vice Mayor, I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah. I kind of lean towards a combination. And I've watched all of the code enforcement board meetings this year, and most of the things that comes up, whether the fine should be reduced or cut out or that type of thing, rather than what the violation, whether it truly was a violation or not. And I think, as Marshall said earlier, there's some more complicated, higher violations that I think we need the expertise on. A majority of the cases I've seen, the board can handle fine with a little more training. So and I'm in favor of putting this person, signing a contract now and determine how we move forward as we go forward.
Me, it's the difference between trying a case in front of a judge and trying there in front of a jury. The jury doesn't have training either, but they get all the information they need. But there are times that you don't want to go in front of a jury. You'd rather go in front of a judge who has the training.
Good point.
So I'm in favor of the contract. I guess I'm just a little unclear on where do we move forward? Do we put this on a future agenda for more discussion on
Yep.
how do we implement it? So maybe the next meeting, let's formally put it on the agenda so that we get more.
I got some
Public
notes
input.
here. I'll come up with some options,
Okay.
what that could look like. And then, you know, what would a formal training program? I don't know that it's as much as content as much as it is process training to make sure you're keeping the meeting structured. It's a very sober event, and I don't know what a better word, but it's very dry, to the point, no side comment. It's not the easiest board to be on too, you know. I always say doing code enforcement in a local community can be kind of the ugliest job too, 'cause you have to go into people's private tutelage and tell them they can't do something. It gets a little awkward. So, you know, just the process training. And it sounds like you guys kind of like a kind of a bifurcated process. I just got to define that a bit and then come up with a more formal training. When we get folks, vet them, train them, whoever becomes the chair, spend maybe a little bit more time so they could control the meeting.
Okay, so we're gonna probably approve this contract today, not make any changes yet to the code enforcement board, talk about it at the next meeting.
Sure.
But if for some reason everybody resigns, you don't have four, then that we have the backup of the magistrate. Okay,
Correct.
I like that. We can have a motion.
All right. I move that we formally accept the professional services agreement with Wagner Legal Services for special magistrate services.
I second that.
Do you want a roll call? or-
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Peters,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stern.
Yes.
And Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Excellent. Okay, the next item, 10B, 2024-016. And I believe it's a resolution with our entry sign or something like
I'm
that.
gonna let Len walk through this one. He's done the legal review a little more closely than I have. You got to review that yesterday.
Yeah,
so-
yesterday. It's a I've seen this agreement a million times. It's just a standard agreement with FDOT. Anytime you want to install anything in there right away, essentially they're saying, it's at your peril, your cost, your maintenance, your risk. I believe this one's for a 20-year term. So because technically it says at the end you have to remove it, but it could always be renewed after that. But essentially, anytime you put and this from the landscaping, anytime you put anything in FDOT's right away, it's your responsibility, not theirs. So that's all the agreement is allowing us to replace those signs.
Okay.
And this is the
Any
final step.
discussion? So you're saying after this, we get our signs?
Well, after we sign it, we send it back to them and then they take 2 weeks probably to do some processing, 3 weeks to processing, and then the sign company will show up and start working.
And I like,
So before the end of the fiscal year, we
We'll
should see
have
signs in the right of way. It's FDOT time.
Okay.
Okay.
Excuse me, when they install it, is going to be any intrusion based upon the work that they're doing? Does it pay to wait a little while? Or if it's going to be fixed and not have to be moved, we have to make sure of that.
So we coordinated this with Brad and his team with the FDOT project. We're outside of the FDOT right away. We'll make sure they're not, doing work right at that location and then it's secured in place. And then we'll follow up after installation. We'll gussy up the landscaping and fix the lights and
Great.
things of that nature.
Okay.
I think it's going to be more of a problem, potential problem at this north end of town than at the south end of town, because that's kind of out of the way
Mhm.
anyway. I don't need to discuss this. I think we just approve it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think so. I'm good with that.
Definitely.
We could have a motion.
I move that we approve resolution number 2024-016.
Second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to town commission comments, Commissioner Goldberg.
Well, I want to thank the entire finance team. Certainly the conservative and financially stable budget that we have is so very important. That's what this community wants, to be able to be so effective in submitting such a comprehensive report to us for review that we'll be doing in the ensuing weeks. I thank you. It's wonderful for us as a board to have this presentation to work from. It's very gratifying that everything that we had down, our strategic plan, it seems that we have met it. We're sitting very financially comfortable, better than comfortable. And we may be looking at a few years that'll be a little more strident in our views, and it's consistent with everything that we've done and everything that we're looking forward to. So I thank the town, everyone that works here. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, David. That was a good presentation and I agree with the mayor. I love reserves and money for that rainy day, and more money we can put in that. You never know what's going to happen in the future. And I just like to wish everybody a happy summer and keep our fingers crossed for no storms. Thank you.
David, it is a pleasure doing budget work with you as opposed to when I first got on this commission, where it was a very different process and it was painful. This is not painful. This is logical, cohesive. We get pretty pie charts so we can see where everything is working, and it works. And we make 5-year plans, and Amazing. 3.5 years in, they actually work. To me, that's great. So thank you really to you and your team because this is terrific.
I echo that. Thank you, David. And just a comment for those units and condos who have not had the inspection yet from the fire department. It's wonderful that there's no permit charge for it. However, you're probably going to find it's going to be extremely expensive to come up to code. That's been lacking in the past. It's necessary. But from what I've seen so far, very detailed inspection. An example is fireproof cabinets where paint would have to go in rather than being stored in an open storage area or in a garage or something. They're pretty complete and what they're asking for, and probably in the long run, it's a good thing.
Yes, thank you, David, for an excellent budget presentation. You really synthesize it for us in a very understandable, actionable way. And so we really appreciate that. And I also want to say thank you to Representative Gossett Seidman. I think she is the one behind these appropriations. And I mean, that's a huge benefit to us. I mean, if you think of the 642,000 that we're being able to send to reserves, I mean, we got the 275 last year and that's 550,000 right there. I mean, you can almost attribute her efforts to the amount that we're putting towards the reserves. I mean, it's really excellent. And really is an incredible accomplishment considering in 75 years, we haven't received anything like that. So a big, huge thank you to Representative Gossett Seidman and everyone else who was a part of that. Town attorney, anything else?
No, Mayor. Thank you.
Town manager.
David. So we have a joke, Skender bought him this book and it was, no, David, no, so he's great to have in the office, good financial mind. Thank you, David, for keeping us on course, keeping me from wandering. So thank you. Great work. Also, kind of going to what the Vice Mayor, it's our fire rescue department. They're going to work with you, those in the condos. We're finding things that should have been fixed 30 years ago or should have been inspected annually that just haven't. I don't know how we got here. I mean, we can all kind of gasp, but so now, with Matt and Chief Joseph working the case, you should have a fire alarm that works. You should have a sprinkler system that sends out water. Those are, the little stuff. We're not going to beat everybody up. Is it paint stored in the right, we'll work with you guys on that. And that's not the thing. It's just some of these systems are just not working, like fire pumps that just aren't working. I'm scared, when I hear these reports. So that's, we're going to work and come up with a process to help, because we know that the recertification program was painful. But again, these are life safety systems. So that's going to be the priority, but there's some condos that I don't know how we got here, but nothing works. So we're going to have to get things to work. But Matt and Chief Joseph have made the commitment to work with the condos, come up with a cooperative plan to phase it in, because we understand some of the pain that's involved or the cost. But yeah, we're finding, fire systems just not in operable conditions, and that's their priority. The storage of materials, this and that, which will be a pain in the butt for all the condo presidents in the room. Yeah, I know. Your maintenance guy puts that there, this there. We'll have to clean that up a bit, but that's not the big issue. The big issue is I want to, if somebody pulls an alarm, it goes off, tells you to leave. If the suppression system goes on, water comes out,
Right.
Those things were probably going to be a little bit heavier on getting you to fix those things sooner rather than later. But the other stuff we'll get to in time and make sure that works. But we will be working with you all. Again, the budget season is here. We're in great shape. Proud to, again, report our financial strength. is impeccable, second to none. We're maintaining our, low tax structure and still doing all these capital projects. So again, thank you for your support. David, thank you. Also, new assistant in the manager's office, Madison Noonan, is going to be our new executive assistant. She'll be helping myself, David Linelda, the management team with the projects and tasks. So if you need anything, you can't find me, just find her and we'll get things for you as soon as we can. I think we made copies of the presentation before you leave, so you could take those home. If you have any questions, forward those to me. Any changes you'd like to see or discuss offline, let me know. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Announcements, board vacancies, Board of Adjustment and Appeals Board. We have one vacancy for a 3-year term. So do we, Ms. Jones, does she fill this vacancy or there's still a vacancy on the Natural Resources? There's still one vacancy after, so there's a vacancy on the Natural Resources Preservation Advisory Board. Upcoming meetings and events, the town hall is closed in observance of June 19th. July 4th, town hall is closed in observance of Independence Day. July 9th at 9:30, we have a Board of Adjustment and Appeals regular meeting. So what's not on here, when's our next town commission meeting?
July 23rd. So this is
Okay.
the purposed break, and it times to the date at which we have to pass the truth and millage resolution for the maximum. This is your summer break period, if you will, from regular meetings until July 23rd. Then we'll be back into August, September. Then we'll be back into the double months, 3 times a month, maybe if we need a work session. But I'm not seeing a work session on the horizon. Everything seems to be working out well, and David's kind of explained it clearly enough for each of you. Should you have any detailed questions, we could be able to address it, and anything from the FAB. So July 23rd, long
Okay, so
answer.
normally our meeting would have been July 16th, but it is July 23rd instead.
Mhm.
Correct?
That's
Okay,
correct.
And not the earlier one either, not the first week.
correct.
Mhm.
The July 2nd, we struck when we talked about the
Right.
listed meetings, because it's too close to July 4th and all that. So instead of so July 23rd is our next town commission meeting at 1:30.
Correct.
And then
Sorry.
after that is July 27th at 10 a.m. is the Financial Advisory Board meeting, which is when they hear the budget.
Oh, here's the
presentation.
budget next week, June
Oh, oh.
27th. I think this is like,
Okay.
this is their quarterly meetings, July. So they're going to meet month to month. So
So
they could pick up anything if they miss it on.
The July 27th, that's my year.
that's really a June. Okay, 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 okay.
So next Thursday, the FAB meets at 10 a.m. to go over the budget in here.
Okay, so that should be June 27th at 10 a.m., not July, for the Financial Advisory Board meeting. Okay, that makes sense. I'm sure they don't want to meet so frequently. Board action report, we have that one that we already discussed about the inadequate attendance, which puts us in peril for the number of people on the Code Enforcement Board. Okay, well, with that, it's 3:37. We can adjourn. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Good.